Hello, welcome back. My name is JPGZ and this is episode 4 of Rosewood Takeover. If you haven't been here since the start of the series, you will know what is coming, but if you haven't, there should be a link somewhere above for episode 1. Anyway, let's roll the intro. Rosewood. The place where my Project Zomboid story begins. You see, my knowledge of the game is minimal. I've played for 44 hours, and I would say a good 20 of these are sat in the main menu. This is the area we've picked to work in, and yes, it's not just the town. The biggest challenge we will face will be clearing the prison, but as of now, I am nowhere near ready. The objective is very simple: clear and secure Rosewood. So it's day 32 and last episode, yes, we did die and reset the traits. Now to address the elephant in the room, yes, I did take Sunday Driver only because I needed one more negative point to add another positive on. Safe to say, I can see why you all mentioned it was a bad choice from the driving in this episode. As always, I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody that's been watching along. I've had some great comments on the editing, which is a real motivator to keep putting the time in. I don't normally do a lot of plugs for subs, but I thought it was probably a good idea as we do grow the channel. 93% of you that watch the videos are not subscribed, and if you do enjoy the video, in the bottom right there's a logo. It's a quick way to do so and you can continue watching. Also, don't forget to like the video, leave me a comment telling me what your favourite weapon is in Project Zomboid and why. Anyway, we started the day by heading back out to get a second generator. The idea is to get one set up at a gas station so we have a good access to fuel moving forwards. I know there's one in a house at the back of the fire station somewhere. I remember seeing it when I was looking for the generator book a couple of episodes back, and after looting a couple of the garages we found the second generator. Unfortunately, realising I couldn't climb a fence with it, so the long way around it was. As you can see, my stupid idiotic behaviour saw me drop the generator as I got out my crowbar, and it wasn't until I got back to base that I realised. So back it was to get the generator, then back home to drop it in the fire truck. Back at base I thought it was probably a good time to clean things up. I've used this place as a bit of a dumping ground recently, and from LaserPie1013's comment, I can use the trash cans to get rid of any junk. I spent some time running around the base collecting any junk off the ground and dropping it into the bins, and after filling the first I thought it's probably a good idea to put the bins outside instead of keeping them in the base. So I took this one from the cupboard, dropped it outside and started to fill it up. Once all the floors were cleared, we dropped the last of the loot upstairs, headed off to read some more of the first farming book before getting in bed ready for day 33. Day 33 was a quiet day for me. A single Z of crowd control to take care of out front, then I turned my attention to carpentry. We've been putting off getting level 4 for the rain collectors for some time, and today that's what I did. We started by dismantling all the desks in the office, then headed back out to the back of the fire station to dismantle some more furniture. After a couple of hours we finally struck level 4 and headed back to base. When I got back I finished off the first fishing book and got to work on sorting all the loot I left in the kitchen. We finished the table of goodies 2.0, then headed to bed ready for day 34. Another quiet day on day 34. As we were up early we started the day continuing to work our way through the rest of the loot in the kitchen. I must admit the game feels so much nicer with the half decent traits I've got now. Once everywhere was clear and everything was put away, we grabbed some breakfast, then headed back out to our usual tree spot to chop some more wood. We need to make some amendments to the base and now's the time to get this done. I think my overweight trait kicks in when the manual work starts, as I spent a couple of hours just sat around getting my breath. Around 3 PM we headed back to base, transcribed the journal with our level 4 carpentry, then headed into the bedroom to get to work on mechanics volume 1. At around midnight we headed off to bed and ready to go on day 35. On day 35 it was time to start the developments to the base. Following some comments on the third video about the position of the generator, we now had a plan on where to put it. With no crowd control to take care of, I hopped in the fire truck and headed over to the trees to collect my logs. Again, taking my tips from the comments section, using the ropes to tie them into stacks of 4. Once the boot was filled, it was back to base to carry all the logs upstairs. I grabbed the sledgehammer from the storage room downstairs and started work taking out some of the walls upstairs above the staircase to gain access to the garage roof. A few of you mentioned this in the comments of the previous videos, so thank you. This is where things got fun. Kia Rolf mentioned that I needed to build one wooden floor to access the roof, which didn't actually register till I fell through. Luckily I wasn't damaged. I grabbed the carpentry supplies, cut the logs into planks and got to work on putting in the floor tiles. After I got the first 2 in, I suspected that was all I needed to do and I fell through again. This time I had terminal damage. I mean, look at the health bar. It's times like these when my panic really sets in because I have no idea how to fix it. My only idea was to eat food in hope that I could survive, and after reading the critical injuries I suspected I was done for with it saying good night. Just another unexpected twist in my journey so far. After some playing around, I realised that using the right click walk option shows you which tiles you can walk on and which you can't. So I took the risk and one plank at a time began to fix the roof all the way around whilst my health began to come back. By 9 PM the roof was all fixed and it was time to put in the first rain catcher. Now I've heard if you put it above a sink it will go directly through to the sink without the need to purify it. So I worked out where the sink was, grabbed the required items, and finally 4 episodes in I placed the first rain catcher. Let me know in the comment section below if this actually works without the plumbing. I stuck up a new wall and door out on the balcony, read some more of the mechanics book, then headed to bed ready to put the next part of our plan into play on day 36. On day 36 we set our sights firmly on starting farming. Now we had access to the roof, it's a prime position to start producing our own food. But let me tell you, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've seen people do this on videos, so I have some sort of plan, and the first thing I need to do is find a way of getting soil from the garden to the roof. I started by attempting to dig up soil from the garden, but my only option was to dig graves or dig furrows. I geared up and decided to head out into the field out front. Upon investigation on the PZ map, it looks like there's some sort of farm building which hopefully has what I'm looking for. As always, the aim is to clear Rosewood of the Zeds, so I cleared everyone I could find as I crossed the field. Obviously my weapon broke, so back to stomping for now. I finally found myself a hunting knife on one of the farmers, pulled out for a little stealth kill, then spotted a larger group over by the barn that I wanted to access. I headed over to the farmhouse to loot there first, but was also met by another group of Zeds, so a couple at a time I began to lure them in and kill them off. Now they were taken care of, I looted up the farmhouse, finding some more food supplies for back at base. I headed back out towards the barn, only for another group to have joined the party, so again, in small groups I began to pick them off. We managed to land another hunting knife and a selection of seeds, and once they were dispatched, I began to inspect the barn. Obviously there were more inside, so I let them break out through the window to come to me. One final farmer inside, then we got to looting. The first locker I check, and I find a gravel bag. Now again, with my lack of knowledge in the farming sector, I thought this was exactly what I was looking for. A bag of soil. I do realise later on that this is not what I expected it to be. I found some more seeds and a scythe before heading back to base and getting the farming operation up and running. I did stop at a group of corpses on the way home to craft a load of sheet ropes for future logs, dropped them in the rear yard, then headed upstairs to pour out my gravel. Obviously at this point I realised it was gravel and not soil, so back I went to the garden to collect some soil, then back to the roof to place it ready for our crops. Once the soil was down, I dug the furrows and placed in the seeds. I even left a gap to hopefully protect them from disease. I spent the remainder of the night pulling water from everywhere I could to get all 4 plants well watered. It took many trips around the fire station, but just after midnight they were done. I even placed all of my empty cans out on the balcony in the hope that when it does rain they collect some water for me to reuse. I grabbed my water dispenser from downstairs and placed it by the balcony door, emptied my backpack of all today's loot and headed to bed after a successful day ready for day 37. On day 37, now that we have access to the balcony and our food is planted, it's time to solve our fuel issues. On day 32 we grabbed the second generator and loaded it into the fire truck, and today we're going to take that fire truck to the gas station and hopefully get some fuel. I grabbed 2 of the hunting knives that we collected yesterday, then grabbed my generator from the back of the station, placed it on the balcony ready for my return, grabbed some food for the journey and headed out on the road. It was a little bit further and busier than I expected it to be along the road, and when we reached the gas station I knew I had to do some work on removing Zeds from the area. Out I jumped, heading south first, hoping to gather as many of their attention as possible. The aim here is to lure them away and circle back around, losing them somewhere along the way. The further I got, the more there were, and there was absolutely no way I was attempting to take them head on. I even tried to be a smart ass circling around them to bunch them together, but I quickly decided to just carry on walking. As we got a little further north into the field, it was time to circle back, using the trees we walked past as our spot to lose them. Watching the zombies fall over this fence was probably the most aesthetically pleasing thing I've seen on this game so far. We looped through the trees to lose the main bulk of them, round another set to lose a second group, and made our way back to the gas station, hoping the plan had worked. As we arrived back to the station, there was some crowd control to take care of, but as they were small groups, this wasn't anything to be worried about. There was one large group right by the shop, but as the usual tactic goes, I lured them off into smaller groups, picking them off one at a time. I started by siphoning fuel from a nearby car so I didn't have to take any from the fire truck. I grabbed the generator from the boot, placed it next to the gas pump, filled it with fuel and connected it up. I was about to loot the store at first but decided against it. I turned the generator on and got to work filling the 5 empty gas cans I brought along with me. Once I was done, I filled the generator to the top so it was equipped for the future, dropped everything back in the car and headed to the store as my current food supply back at base was looking a bit bleak. I again went to smash the window with my arm for the second time this series, only to be met by an alarm system. How glad I was not to have done this before getting the gas. As I was panicked, bleeding in the arm and just all round spooked, I rushed back to the car. It was getting late and I needed to get back to base to sort out my wound. I got out of there as quick as I could. Obviously the alarm had alerted everybody, and as I drove back to base I could see them all flooding towards the gas station. I arrived back at base, jumped out the car and headed straight for the first aid cupboard, jumping back down the stairs in the process. I had glass in my arm and a deep wound. It was infected, so I had no idea how to deal with it. I used tweezers to remove the glass, alcohol wipes to disinfect the wound, and a suture needle to stitch everything up. Hopefully I got it right, by luck. I had a quick look outside to see if I'd been followed back to base, checked my crops, added some more cans to the pile, and decided to sit in the bedroom and finish the mechanics book before going to sleep ready for day 38. After yesterday's antics, day 38 was an extremely quiet one whilst I reduced my heart rate. I spent most of the day reading Carpentry 3. Late evening I heard some groans from the front of the building, and after investigation I found a couple of Zeds lurking out the front of the base. I headed out to take care of them, gaining a point in Shortblade at the same time. Once that was done, we headed back to the bedroom to finish Carpentry 3 and get some rest ready for day 39. Day 39 had a little more physicality to it compared to yesterday. We started the day by transcribing the journal, then headed out to check on the crops and give them some more water. We constructed another rain collector on the roof, so once it did rain we had a good supply to take us forwards, and around midday heard some rumblings from the front of the fire station. The great benefit to having the balcony now is the fact that I can head straight out there and have a look to see what's going on at the front of the base instead of just walking out of a door. We took care of a bit of crowd control, then turned our attention to getting the generator housed and back up and running, so it was back to the trees it was. This time around, armed with our sheet ropes we made a few days back. There was a group of about 6 standing by our logs, so as usual we dragged 1 or 2 away at a time, taking care of business. We tied all the logs into stacks of 4, then began to drag them back to base, ready to start the work. My aim was to also start upgrading the walls now we have Carpentry 4, but that's a job for another day. We took 2 stacks out onto the balcony, grabbed our tools and got to work. Firstly moving the generator so we could build a good space around it. Then we put up the door and the wall frames, added the walls, and as it got a little late we headed to bed, ready for day 40 so we could finally add the door and get things up and running. On day 40 we got to work adding the door that we ran out of time with last night. We also brought the second water dispenser upstairs and added the final wall to the frame to complete the generator room. I had one last thing I wanted to do before putting the lights on, and that was covering the windows in the top level of the base. Everything downstairs was secure, but the top windows may draw some attention in if they are not taken care of. Out we headed back to the houses at the back of the station, grabbed some final curtains, had a quick wash in the bath, grabbed a new lamp for the bedroom and set off back to base. Once back at base we covered up all the windows, then turned on the generator, and this time we were up and running properly. I added my lamp to the bedroom, turned off all the lights that were not needed, then headed back out to the trees for the last 2 stacks of logs. Whilst out there I grabbed a load of sticks and twigs. I'm not quite sure what they're for yet, but we'll find something for them. With the electric now fully working, we watched Woodcraft episode 3 on the VHS. It's the little things in this game that are so damn cool. We then headed to the bedroom to make a start on first aid book 1 and headed to bed ready for day 41. So day 41 was the day we headed back out on the road. You see, we've cleared most of the residential area of Rosewood now, and my food levels are starting to look pretty bleak. This is why getting the farm going as soon as possible is hugely important to me finishing this series. The goal for today was to get back to the school area, grab the step van that I do have a key for, and loot the houses around that square. Hopefully this gives me enough canned product to see out the next couple of weeks whilst I get everything at base done and the crops grown. I used the branches from yesterday to create myself a hunting knife spear. Never used it before, but it was worth a go. I also took the trusty metal pipe as a backup. I switched the generator off before leaving just to be on the safe side, then grabbed one of the gas cans from the fire truck so I could fill up the step van. The carry capacity will be so useful when we move out further to do the loot runs. We cleared a few Zeds en route to the van, but all in all it was fairly quiet. When we arrived in the car park there were a couple of Zeds waiting, but nothing to trouble us right now. I headed straight for the step van, added the fuel from the gas can we bought along, then emptied the back of anything we didn't want to keep. Now the step van was secure, it was time to start looting, and the obvious place to start was the school. I headed into the field first, cleared off all the stragglers, and I must say I really do like the spear, but I suspect it could get quite tricky with larger groups. We cleared what looks to be the maintenance room of anything useful, then headed back to the van to empty our bag. We then headed into the school, working room to room, clearing any Zeds that were inside. In all honesty, there were no more than a handful, and they were all situated around what looks to be the main reception. Once they were all dead, we worked our way around the rooms, again collecting anything of use, which was nothing really apart from a lot of books and some medical supplies in the nurse's room. As it was getting late, we headed back to the van, dropped off all the loot, again emptying everything into the van, then spent the night in the empty school, ready to continue on day 42. We spent the majority of the morning on day 42 in the school library looting a lot of skill books. I don't really know what I've got at base, so I just grabbed a variety of everything. Then another trip back to the van to drop off the loot. We then began to clear the houses to the north of the van, again collecting anything that was food or anything to be used back at base. I did find some more gloves, something I've been looking for a while, as I need to clean the glass on the floor back at base. Another trip back to the van with loot, then over to the east side to continue looting. A couple of Zeds to take care of, a little bit more food in the house, a nice big flashlight, and on to the next one. We found another fire truck and a key, but no fuel in this one. We can use it for spare parts later on if needed. We also found another hiking backpack which I kept. I could possibly have different bags for different activities that we might do in the future. Another loot drop off at the van, and I have no idea where this Zed came from. Now my max pop is set to 60 days, so it might just have been a random spawn, but she wasn't there as I walked here earlier. As I walked into the garden of the next house, I was taken by surprise as I walked into a large group. Thankfully only a couple spotted me, so we continued to pick them off in small groups. We found a lot of matches in the house, some odd bits and bobs, then all of a sudden there were more in the garden. Out I went to clear again. I did one last trip to the van so I could be fresh for tomorrow, then headed back to the house to get a good night's sleep, ready for day 43. On day 43 I woke up hungry and forgot to bring some food back from the van, so I headed straight out on the move to the next house. I managed to find some canned chili, so we filled our faces, collecting what was left, then moved on to the south side. A little bit of crowd control at the first house and some more canned food. The next house gave me more canned food, some first aid supplies and some .233 rounds. In the next house we found more food and another large hiking backpack. Then the next house we were met by a load of zombies locked inside. It was pretty easy to deal with them as a couple of them came out through the window one at a time. Then I spent about 10 minutes waiting for the remainders to break down the front door. We found more wine and cigarettes, bourbon and another bag. As we were now overloaded with loot, I wanted to skip the last house and get back to the van, but while we were here we may as well give it a go. Safe to say, this was a mistake. If you remember last episode, we spawned in a house with zombies in party hats and died. I quickly realised this was the house, and before I knew it they were out the window and onto me. Imagine dying to your own zombified corpse. Well, I wasn't far off. One managed to get a good bite, and once again I feared the worst as a health icon began to flash. Luckily this time it was only a laceration and bleeding. Not ideal, but I panicked and ran away as quick as I could. My first thought was to jump the fence into the school as the Zeds couldn't climb it, but then I struggled to climb it myself, so the long way around we took. Probably a good option, as when we got to the car there were some Zeds already there. I made it to the van by the skin of my teeth, hopped in, started the engine and got the hell out of there. 2 episodes in a row the party hats had dropped in unexpected and caused me issues. It's like they've become the unexpected star of the show. We arrived back at base, jumped out the van with terrible moodles, and I quickly grabbed some first aid supplies from the back and headed inside. I rebandaged both my wounds and could finally rest. As I start to bring in the loot from the run, I think that's enough for episode 4. It's been a wild one, but I feel like I've taken some good steps forward. If you've made it to the end of the video, then do me a favour, like the video and leave a comment. It helps push the video in the algorithm and helps me move the channel forward. If you're not already subscribed, then hit the logo in the bottom right and be ready for episode 5. Keep the tips and tricks coming in the comments. It's good game knowledge and it shows how much a community can help. Have a great rest of your day. I'm JPGZ. Love you, bye.